Hello, I'm Silverpaw, and today I'm bringing you Chapter 7, Part 2 of The Storm Within. Wolf blinked surprisedly. You shouldn't apologize. You're fine. He cocked his head towards Fox, leaning against the wall, arms folded. This guy, though? You should have heard him last night. You started it, Fox retorted angrily. If you hadn't called me an entitled... Cut it out, Fox! Krystal stopped and gave him another sharp look. I already know your side of the story. She resumed applying the bandages. I don't want to have to be the moderator here, but I'll do it if you can't get along otherwise. Fox cocked his head. Who says we have to get along? There's nothing worse than conflict within a team. As long as you are on board, I want to minimize that drama. Then why am I still on board? The question stopped Krystal in her tracks. Easy solution. Just get rid of me. Problem solved. Not so fast, Fox butted in. We rescued you. It's only fair that we get something out of this. We've been over this, McCloud. I'm not giving you anything until you change your attitude. Krystal was quick to chime in, sensing the rising tension between the two. What exactly do you mean, change your attitude? You mean he didn't tell you? Wolf chuckled. About any of last night? About the whole berating me for losing my ship deal? Krystal turned to the Vulpine in the far corner. Fox? Oh, but of course he'd leave the best part out, Wolf continued. I didn't expect anything better from him at this point. Wait. Krystal wheeled around to face Fox. You taunted him about losing his ship down there? Krystal, you have to understand that he... Well, I don't care what he did, Fox. It's just cruel. Her face was a mixture of shock and disappointment. You never, ever joke about something like that. Fox immediately became offensive. You know as well as I do that Wolf started all of this, he retorted. You have to believe me. I don't know who to believe anymore. Her voice had an edge to it all now. Every time I've seen you and Wolf in the same room, all you've done is bully him. Maybe it's about time he gets a chance to explain himself. What the hell? Fox couldn't believe his ears. Whose side are you on here? Certainly not yours right now, she hissed. Fox, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this childish behavior has to stop. The Vulpine was stunned into silence. Childish behavior? Was it childish to risk his life to save another? The only childish behavior here was that of Wolf, who happened to look very pleased with the current exchange. Krystal continued more forcefully than ever. I want to help you and Wolf both, but you've both got to stop getting in the way. Please just give me a chance to hear the other side of the story. The thought of Falco and Slippy interrupting her the day before briefly flashed through Fox's mind. He surely wasn't as bad as they were, was he? No. He'd let her get what she wanted, watch and learn, as she told him. Plus, he knew she wouldn't be able to resist reading Wolf's mind at some point. He realized she could gain the info he couldn't if he could swallow his pride for a moment and let her do her work. He threw up his hands in defeat. You know what? Fine. Go ahead. Do your detective work. He remained in the far corner of the room with his arms crossed, watching the other two intently. Wolf's eyes darted between Fox and Krystal. How do you even put up with him? Don't get the wrong impression of Fox, she replied tiredly. He's not usually like this. I certainly hope so. I didn't expect you all to follow the lead of a madman. Fox opened his mouth as if to reply, but shut it before Krystal shot him another warning look. I hope you understand where he's coming from, Wolf. He risked his life to save you. And he wasn't satisfied with the results, huh? Well, let me ask you this then. What part of that was my fault? Krystal was silent. I never asked to be rescued. I never asked to be shot down. You attacked us first. Your team interfered with our operation. What was your operation? Krystal asked, eager to steer the conversation away from trouble. The question took the Lupine by surprise. He was clearly expecting her to escalate the situation as Fox had the previous night. To get resources. Such as? She kept her eyes focused intently on his face, as if trying to hypnotize him. He stared right back at her, finally replying after much hesitation. Medical supplies, scrap metal. He paused yet again, then reluctantly broke eye contact. Food, he muttered. Krystal raised her eyebrows. Food? Wolf refused to look her in the eyes. You were stealing food? Are you done humiliating me yet? The Lupine snapped suddenly. You can stop trying to get into my mind now. Krystal stammered, trying to find the best way to respond when Fox laughed sarcastically. Funny you say that, he interjected. Something you want to share, McCloud? The Vulpine moved towards the bed. Allow me to explain. Krystal here is a Serenian. You know what that means? He crossed his arms for dramatic flair, unaware of Krystal's wide-eyed tension. She reads minds, Wolf. No matter what lies come out of your mouth, your thoughts have betrayed you. You've unknowingly confessed everything to her. Fox grinned, waiting for the humiliation on Wolf's face, but the lupine simply raised an eyebrow at Krystal. A psychic, huh? Wolf was certainly surprised, but showed no signs of worry. That would explain it, then. Explains what? Fox asked. Krystal eyed Wolf before seeming to understand. Yes, I believe it does. Explains what? He asked more forcefully. Wolf was about to answer before noticing Krystal, who had suddenly become tense. She shook her head warningly. After a moment of thought, the lupine looked back to Fox, and finally replied, "You think I'm going to tell you?" He grinned. "You can't just force information out of me, McCloud." "Nobody can." "Nobody except Krystal." She raised a finger. I think I've divulged enough for the time being." Wolf interjected. Krystal's face filled with relief almost as quickly as it had with worry moments before. She clearly wanted to ask Wolf more questions, but decided not to overstep her boundaries. "All right," she sighed, calming herself. "Are you hungry?" It was a silly question. There was no doubt Wolf would be starving after all he'd been through. "I suppose," he replied as nonchalantly as possible. "Let me finish applying these bandages, then we'll get you some breakfast, okay?" The lupine nodded, watching Krystal apply the final bandage. He opened his mouth to speak, but hesitated for a moment. "Thank you." She looked up at him, smiling gently. "Of course." Fox watched the scene unfold, mouth agape. He had never heard a single word of gratitude come from his nemesis before. The fact that Krystal could have put up with Wolf for so long, enough to get a thank you out of him, was nothing short of a miracle. "There. All done." She finished wrapping the final bandage and stood. "Let's go get you some food, then." Wolf briefly caught Fox's eye, then nodded to Krystal. The vulpine remained standing in the doorway, unsure of how to process current events. "We'll be back soon. Let's go, Fox." She began to leave the room, Fox following in her footsteps. Fox spoke as soon as the door sealed itself shut behind him. "Wow. That's how you do it." Krystal didn't even look back, but Fox knew she was grinning. "So, what did you learn from him?" "He was on Fanfiction to get supplies," she replied. "To get food." "Well, yeah, but what else?" Fox was eager to learn what information she'd collected with her abilities. "You were there. You heard everything I did." She turned the corner and Fox followed. "But you must have read his mind somewhere during that whole exchange." She hesitated. "I didn't read his mind." "Can't be true," he replied. "I saw the way you were focusing on him, and what he was talking about with the whole that explains it thing. Why wasn't he surprised about you being a psychic?" "I'm not going to discuss this," she said flatly. "If you want more information, you're going to have to get it from him, not me." Their conversation ceased when they entered the dining hall. It was a small and simple room, cabinets and countertops surrounded a single metal table, and the massive food processor loomed in the far corner of the room. Krystal grabbed a bowl from the nearby cabinet and opened the door on the appliance and placed the bowl inside. "Let's see. We should make him something easy to digest." She thought for a moment as she closed the device, then began to press a variety of buttons. "Bland, but nutrient-rich. How about... Okay, this should work." She pushed one last button, and with a beep, the behemoth whirred to life. "You think Wolf's ever seen one of these before?" Fox quipped while the machine did its work. Krystal shot him a look. "Stop it." "What? I'm not even half kidding. If he was that desperate for food on Fanfiction, I doubt he's experienced something like this before. You push some buttons and a perfect meal comes out? It's probably witchcraft to him." "You want to know how I got on his good side?" Krystal began to lecture him, a hint of irritation in her voice. "For starters, I didn't mock him. Not for his ship, not for stealing food, not for committing crimes, not for anything." Fox raised his finger and opened his mouth to reply, but Krystal continued. "That includes capitalizing on the fact that he's not as privileged as we are." He shut his mouth. "But you want to know the most important thing?" I listened. The food processor clicked a few more times before suddenly falling silent, a moment later beeping cheerfully. Krystal opened the machine and brought out a perfectly cooked, pleasantly warm bowl of synthetic breakfast for Fox. I set all of my preconceived notions of him aside and tried my best to listen to him from an unbiased standpoint. You can never learn anything if you're so quick to criticize every word that comes out of his mouth. "If it were anybody else, I would do that," Fox protested, "but... You know I would. But what? What makes Wolf different?" "Just..." The vulpine sighed. I don't know, the history between us, it's hard to believe a single word out of his mouth because I just know he's out to get me. After all these years of being at each other's throats, this would be a perfect opportunity for him to kill me once and for all. I can see where you're coming from, Fox, but this is also a perfect opportunity for you to prove him wrong. She placed her free hand on his shoulder. He came onto this ship with his preconceived notions about you, and so far you've acted exactly how he expected, and that was wrong. I think you need to apologize for how you've treated him. I need to apologize? He's the one who...